Yeah, and it's been a journey, hadn't it?
It is. It's a lot of dark hallways. She raised great babies. We got wonderful children. They're all three. My son's a...
And as humanity will outlive not only us, but our children.
She stayed silent through it all. Until now. Toby Keith's wife has finally spoken out, and what she allegedly said is shaking the internet. From hidden struggles to untold truths, her confession is raising eyebrows everywhere. Want to know what really happened? Subscribe now. You won't believe your ears. When fans saw Toby Keith lighting up the stage, they saw energy, passion, and that unmistakable spark. But what they didn't see was what it cost him. While stadiums roared and crowds sang along, a quieter reality played out away from the spotlight. There were early mornings filled with scans, treatments, and carefully planned routines no one ever heard about. But not once did he let that stop him. And standing beside him through it all, unseen but unwavering, was someone who carried just as much weight without ever stepping into the spotlight. Someone who stayed silent. Until now. For decades, Trisha was known to fans simply as Toby Keith's wife. But behind that title was a force most people never realized. She wasn't giving interviews or chasing cameras. She was managing life, holding the family together, and guarding a promise made long ago. That they'd always face everything together, even if it meant staying silent when the world was asking questions. When the news broke of Toby's health journey, people were surprised, but Trisha had known all along. From the first doctor's appointment to the first day of treatment, she had been there, steady and strong. But what was she holding inside? That's the part no one knew. In the quiet of their Oklahoma ranch kitchen, they made a promise. One simple, powerful agreement. No matter what, the music wouldn't stop. For Toby, music was more than a career. It was who he was. And Trisha, more than anyone, understood that. She promised to make sure he'd always have the chance to keep playing, to keep giving, for as long as he could. So even when the days got harder and rest came less often, Toby went on stage. He'd smile, crack jokes, and hit every note like nothing had changed. What kept him going? Part of it was grit, but part of it was Trisha. She never showed fear, at least not in public. She managed everything: appointments, schedules, and school pickups. While he strummed chords in hospital rooms, she quietly rewrote the entire rhythm of their lives. And still, she didn't say a word to the world. They say strength shows up when no one is watching. For the Keith family, it looked like whispered prayers in hallways, laughter between IV beeps, and bedtime stories read beside hospital chairs. Trisha created a sense of normal, even when nothing was. She'd make sure there was bacon frying in the morning, music humming from the speakers, and something to smile about each day. Their daughter Crystal kept the younger ones grounded, reading books, drawing with crayons, and making sure they still had bedtime stories that didn't involve medical charts. Toby, even when he was exhausted, would pick up his guitar and let the music drift through the house. There were hard days, days filled with uncertainty and quiet worry. But no one outside the home saw that. Why? Because Trisha made sure all anyone saw was love, strength, and unity. But she never talked about her own exhaustion. She just kept showing up. Years before, the couple had built something bigger than their own lives. It was called OK Kids Corral, a foundation and home for families with children facing serious illness. At first, it was about helping others. Then, as life changed, it became something personal. Trisha dove deeper than ever into the mission. She organized fundraising events, arranged holiday dinners, and met with families face to face. She sat with parents while their children slept, offered help with homework, and made sure no one ever felt alone. Meanwhile, Toby showed up too, sometimes quietly, sometimes with a song. One day, he walked into a room full of families and surprised them with an impromptu version of Beer for My Horses. The kids didn't care how famous he was, they just loved singing along. That joy, it fueled him, and it reminded Trisha why their promise to keep going mattered so much. For years, Trisha held everything in. She let the music speak for them. But there came a moment, unexpected, unplanned, when her silence ended. It happened during a quiet benefit event, surrounded by close friends, foundation supporters, and people who'd been touched by the work of OK Kids Corral. No script, no spotlight, just a heartfelt message shared from the edge of the stage. Her voice trembled at first, but her words were clear. She spoke about the courage she had witnessed, not just in her husband, but in every child they had helped, every parent who had held on to hope, and every volunteer who had given time, energy, and love. And then she said something no one had expected, something that made the entire room go still. She said, "The world saw a strong man. I saw a man who leaned on his family, on faith, and on you. And I want you to know he felt every bit of your support. After that night, everything shifted. Across the country, fans began organizing tribute nights, celebrating the music, but also the mission behind it. But while the world lit candles, played his songs, and shared memories, Trisha did something different. She returned to OK Kids Corral with her daughters. They walked through every hallway, every room, reading handwritten notes from families who'd stayed there. They planted a young oak tree in the garden, one that would grow tall and strong over time. She wore his denim jacket that day, the one he used to wear on stage. She didn't need to say anything. Every step, every smile, every touch told its own story. This was more than honoring a memory. It was continuing a legacy. Trisha didn't stop with that visit. She stepped into the role Toby once filled, hosting foundation events, attending board meetings, and checking in with the very families they had served together. She stood in front of audiences, sometimes with tears in her eyes, sharing stories and inviting others to be part of what they'd built. Country artists continued to show up. Some had toured with Toby, others had grown up listening to him. They played his songs at benefit shows, shared personal moments, and reminded the world why his voice mattered. But now there was a second voice, the quiet, powerful voice of a woman who had stood in the wings for years and was finally stepping forward, not for fame, not for applause, but for something bigger. So why did she stay silent for so long? It wasn't fear, and it wasn't weakness. It was love. Trisha understood something many people never do. Sometimes the loudest support isn't said with words. It's in the daily choices, in the quiet sacrifices, and in the way you show up again and again, even when no one's watching. She chose to stay in the background, not because she didn't have a voice, but because she wanted Toby's voice to shine as long as it could. Every time he stepped on stage, every time he smiled through a song, it was because she had helped build the strength behind that moment. Her silence wasn't passive, it was intentional. Behind closed doors, she was handling everything. Doctor's visits, schedules, the emotional weight of not knowing what tomorrow might bring. And she did it with grace. But make no mistake, just because she wasn't speaking publicly doesn't mean she wasn't fighting her own battle. Imagine watching someone you love give every last drop of energy to a stage while you keep the home life stitched together with threads of love, routine, and hope. That takes a different kind of courage. She shielded him from distractions, from headlines, from noise. She gave him the space to stay himself, to stay an artist, a performer, a dreamer, even on the hardest days. And even more than that, she protected the family. Their children were never the center of media storms or tabloid speculation. They had their routines, their moments of joy, their school pickups, and home-cooked meals. Because Trisha made it her mission to create a world that still felt whole, no matter how much was going on behind the scenes. That's what her silence really was. It was a kind of love that didn't need an audience. And when she finally spoke, after all the shows, after all the late nights, after all the quiet prayers, it wasn't to gain sympathy or attention. It was to share something bigger, a reminder that love, when it's real, endures through everything. Her words didn't come as a breakdown. They came as a release, a way to honor not just Toby, but everything they had stood for, everything they had built together, one note, one family, one story at a time. She didn't need to tell every detail. She didn't recount every doctor visit or every tear. What she shared was deeper, how moments of laughter helped them survive hard days, how the small victories, like watching their kids play or seeing a child at the corral smile, kept them grounded. And in that moment, people realized something powerful. Trisha wasn't just Toby's wife. She was part of the reason he was able to keep going, part of the reason his music kept flowing, part of the reason his foundation became what it was. She wasn't behind the scenes anymore. She was the scene now, carrying the same values, the same heart, and the same message. Because real love doesn't always show up on magazine covers or in headline interviews. Sometimes it's staying quiet until the right moment. Sometimes it's in the way you protect a story until you're sure it can be told with the respect it deserves. Let us know in the comments, because some stories aren't finished. They're just waiting for someone like you to keep them going. Subscribe for more heartfelt stories and hit the bell so you never miss what's next.